Week 1 was an absolute blast, and it's time for everyone to overreact. Well, at least until the football gods fix everything. That's always how it goes, and if there's one team that everyone's panicking about, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. The last time we saw Cincinnati, it was in the Super Bowl, where they narrowly lost to the Rams. Obviously, the Bengals had hopes for this year that they would return to the big game with a different outcome. But if Week 1 is any indicator, Cincinnati has some real questions to answer. Like, was the Bengals Super Bowl run a fluke? At the very least, it definitely looked like it in Week 1. Like, man, that was something. The AFC North is certainly an odd division this season. I mean, the Browns have a good team, but Jacoby Brissett is going to be the quarterback until Deshaun Watson's suspension is up. The Ravens are in this Lamar Jackson contract drama with plenty of concerns, and that leaves the Bengals and the Steelers, who are entering their first season after the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger. Mitch Trubisky is the guy for now, but how long until Kenny Pickett takes over? Pittsburgh had a lot to prove in Week 1 and did a good job showing that they can compete in the division, but that wasn't the main takeaway from the game. The biggest takeaway? Joe Burrow looked rough. He managed to turn the ball over 5 times. Yes, 5 times. Burrow had never thrown 4 interceptions in a game ever, and had only thrown 3 in a game once, Week 2 at Chicago last season. On Burrow's first pass of the game, he got baited by Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he took it back for a touchdown. The next drive, Evan McPherson drilled a franchise record 59-yard field goal. After that, the Bengals turned the ball over the next 3 straight drives. Alex Highsmith had a strip sack, TJ Watt had an interception, and Cameron Sutton picked a deep pass that Burrow threw into double coverage for, well, whatever reason. His 5th turnover came in the 4th quarter when he forced a ball into double coverage, and it was picked off by Akello Witherspoon. Despite all of that, the Bengals still almost won that damn game, and honestly, they probably should have. Joe Burrow hit Jamar Chase with 2 seconds left to tie the game, and were an extra point away from a win, but it was blocked by Minkah Fitzpatrick. To make matters worse, in overtime, McPherson missed a 29-yarder. To be fair, Chris Boswell also missed with a 55-yarder, but he made up for it when he drilled a 53-yarder to win it and crush the souls of Cincinnati fans. A lot of the blame is going to be put on McPherson, who was a fantastic kicker last season as a rookie, but it really shouldn't. Everything was fine until long snapper Clark Harris suffered a bicep injury. You wouldn't really expect it for a position that never gets talked about, but essentially, a long snapper is the reason why the Bengals lost. There are also plenty of other things to blame it on though, like Burrow getting set back in training camp after his appendix surgery, or, well, that awful offensive line. Yeah, we talked about this all last year about the line being shit, and it very much still is shit. Rookie guard Cordell Volson gave up a sack on the first play, and while TJ Watt was still in the game, Lyle Collins was just getting bitched. Burrow was sacked 7 times and hit 11 times. It's really the same reoccurring theme that we saw last year at times. The Bengals' offensive line can't protect Burrow, period. Remember, in the divisional round, Burrow got sacked a playoff record 9 times. He just gets constantly beat up, but he did manage to win that game, and he did damn near win versus Pittsburgh. Regardless, if you have a young, potentially elite quarterback, you have to find a way to protect him. The name that always comes up when thinking about it is Andrew Luck, simply because he had so much talent, but he retired early because of injuries that came from, well, a lack of a competent offensive line. Don't forget that Burrow has already torn his ACL in the pros too. There were so many reasons why Cincinnati shouldn't have been that good last year, but they just always found a way. I will say, the Bengals weren't particularly hot in the regular season. They just got hot at the right time. They lost to the Bears, Jets, and twice to the Browns. Not great, but Cincinnati did get hot at the right times and had a lot of things go their way. You have to remember that in the wildcard game against the Raiders, the Bengals easily could have lost. There was a touchdown that was called dead, but somehow not called dead even though there was a whistle, and Derek Carr had a last drive to potentially win the game, but he didn't capitalize. It's honestly still a miracle that the Bengals beat the Titans after giving up 9 sacks. In that Chiefs game, I don't think many people gave Cincinnati a shot. If you want to really know what the game came down to, it was Tyreek Hill not making a catch that he should have in overtime. It went off his hands and Von Bell just picked it off. The Bengals went on to hit a field goal and go to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they lost in the Super Bowl, but damn, they almost won though. It's still crazy to think that the Bengals actually played in a Super Bowl last year. From 1990 to 2021, Cincinnati didn't win a single playoff game. The Bengals were horrible for 30 years, and then it just flipped, at least for a single season. What changed? Joe Burrow. Cincinnati was shit enough to get the first overall pick in 2020 and got the flashy Heisman Trophy and national championship winner Joe Burrow. He was pretty impressive even as a rookie. Unfortunately, it did prematurely end after he tore his ACL and MCL, but he still showed a lot of promise and threw for 2,600 yards and 13 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. The Bengals were still awful, but there were reasons to be optimistic. Then, everything changed last year. Burrow went 10-6 starting and threw for over 4,600 yards and 34 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. He led the league in completion percentage and yards per completion. Burrow was the comeback player of the year and was one of the most talked about players in the league. Everyone was talking about Joe Shiesty and wearing those glasses he always had on. He was absolutely everywhere on social media, and everyone absolutely loved him, and even girls were swooning for thirst traps of him. I would even go as far to say that it was the cool thing to back Burrow, maybe to a fault. Joe Burrow is a fantastic NFL quarterback. There's really no question about that, and I do think that he's on the cusp of being elite, but to put him in the conversation with the actual top guys in the league right now is just absolutely wild. Some analysts and fans claim that Burrow is a top 5 quarterback. I think he certainly has the potential to be at some point if he can clean up some things and get more experience, but let's remember that Burrow is only in his 3rd season and he isn't in the top tier of quarterbacks with guys like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. But that's okay. Burrow still might get there, but he's figuring things out for now. I don't necessarily think the word overrated is the right word to use when talking about Joe Burrow, because I do think that he's really good. I think a better word to use would be overpraised. Burrow is one of the better quarterbacks in the league and has the potential to one day be one of the best. His talent is top notch, there's really no doubt about that, but he's being touted as if he's already at the top of the sport when he's really not. Ja'Marr Chase, however, is much closer to being the best at his position, and truthfully, for those of you that watched the Bengals last year, you know that Ja'Marr Chase did a hell of a lot more for Joe Burrow than Burrow did for him. The Bengals went out and drafted Chase at 5 in 2021 to reunite him with Burrow, who was his college quarterback and was really a huge part of his Heisman campaign. The pick was criticized because Cincinnati definitely needed offensive line help super bad, but I think it's safe to say that it all worked out. Chase had 266 yards in a single game and 1,455 yards on the season, both of which are rookie records. He had 13 touchdowns on 81 receptions and won Offensive Rookie of the Year and was even an All-Pro. In the postseason, Chase had a rookie postseason record 368 yards. I think it's worth noting that Joe Burrow wasn't that great of a college quarterback at all really until Ja'Marr Chase broke out in 2019. Then in the pros, and I know it's only one season, but he didn't really break out until Chase was on the team. Joe Burrow is a fantastic quarterback, but I do have a hard time believing that he's the same player if he doesn't have Ja'Marr Chase to throw the ball to. Chase might literally already be one of the best wide receivers in the league, and the player who I would consider to be the best, Justin Jefferson, is another reason why Burrow was so good at LSU. I mean, I still can't believe that defenses in 2019 had to game plan for Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase. I don't know what the hell you were supposed to do to stop them, really. It's really hard to say whether or not the 2021 Bengals were a fluke. You won't find a single Super Bowl team that hasn't had good breaks go their way to help them get get there. But that's just playoff football in a nutshell. We're going to have to wait and see if Cincinnati plays better and can even get back to the playoffs. Luckily, next week should be a gimme game against a Cowboys team that looked like shit and is now without Dak Prescott. So the Bengals should get a win in week 2. But how do they do for the rest of the season? And more importantly, were the 2021 Bengals a fluke?